This is the World Satsanga on the 18th of January 2014. Okay. So just for the record, we've got Adriana, Yvonne, Mo, Atso, Lily, Chris, Marnie, Alan, Lucy, Verona and Kathleen. And the agenda for this meeting, hopefully if Ula comes in, we will ask us to explain a few things about herself and about her own spiritual journey, which is quite significant actually. Before we carry on, but nevertheless, we'll be okay. Letting things settle down right now, and I've got to talk about really a little bit of information that's come through as part of the channeled work I've been doing with the Origin for the book called The Origin Speaks, which is only 14,000 words away from being completed right now, which is fantastic. For me, it's 7 weeks away at most. It's really, some people might not think it's revelation, but for me it's quite important, because we've been talking about the fact that we're energetic beings, and actually we're not energetic beings. I'm going to go over this in quite some detail in a moment. And then I've allotted some time down here for the meaning of life, which is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, because we should all know this by now. But I'm just going to elaborate a few things, but first I'll ask some questions as to whether people do recognise what our meaning of existence is, basically. And then we're going to do the end of meat meditation, which is going to be sort of a variation on an old meditation we've done some months ago, probably even a year ago actually, for healing the earth, because I very much feel at the moment the earth is it's struggling a little bit with all the chilling things that are happening. The energies are moving around quite a lot, and as a result of that we're getting some quite interesting weather patterns all over the world. Some parts of the world are getting droughts, other parts of the world are getting, shall I say, very wet weather. In the UK, for instance, in the 3 weeks before Christmas and 2 weeks just after Christmas, we had enough rain to fulfill any of our wettest winters, basically. So it's quite interesting that what we've been having. And then we'll have a questions and answers session towards the end, should we have time. Okay. Well, if Ula dials in, I'll let her do so. But other than that, there's no problem. But I want to go straight into this bit about we are energetic beings, because it's quite important to understand that we're not actually energetic beings. We're something else. So I'm going to throw a question before I start. I'm going to throw a question out, because Chris has been asking. He's been trying to get the information beforehand, cheeky boy, as to what's going on. But does anybody understand what we are if we're not energetic beings? Does anybody get any ideas? Because I'm just trying to fathom the depths of the knowledge of people in this Satsanga right now. So, stone science is a good start. That means that we've got a ground base or a zero base level of understanding as to the fact that we all think we're energetic beings, and this is something I've been talking about for a long time, that we are in fact energetic beings. And that the energetic side of it is a higher level that exists beyond the incarnate. But it's not actually quite like that. We're something else. What we are is individualized. I'm going to describe the process associated with this individualization as well. It's quite complex. We are individualized sentience. And by that I mean we're individualized sentience from the source entity. And with that individualized sentience, the source entity assigns energy, a body of energy, if you want to call it that, for us to work with, whilst we're working within it itself, and the structure that it's given us to work with. Now, this may sense to me later, and there's another part of this story that I'm going to sort of leave for later as well, which explains some of the Hindu texts about the breathing in and out of the universe. But I shan't answer that right now, because it's a complete other set of explanations on its own. But in essence, we are individualized sentience. We're not energy beings per se, although we exist as energy beings whilst we're in the multiverse that the source entity created for us. And when we evolve beyond the need to be part of the multiverse and can go back into total communion with the source, we do sort of remove that level of sentience or from the energies. But in essence, we are sentience, pure sentience. Now, I shall explain this, and then also explain the process of which sentience is assigned to energy from the source entity, in the perfect sense. Because there's two versions of this. There's one that happened with our source entity, and there's one that should happen normally. Now, sentience is generally that which is the source entity, and that which is the origin, to be honest, because the origin is pure sentience moving around that which it is. All the energies, all of the things that it is, are created by the use of its sentience moving around those energies. And when it created the source entities, it created or separated out a part of itself, or even shall I say, manifest sentience to create the source entities so that they could go and do their various different things. But in doing that, it also had to assign a body of energy, an aspect of itself, which is, I'm going to say energy is a physicality. So it gave it some sort of physicality to work with, some substance to work with. I think substance is probably the better way of explaining it. So that they could do whatever they needed to do with the structure, i.e. the substantial part of the origin that they had when they were created. And our source entities do the same thing with us. They separate out an aspect of sentience, and they assign it to a body of energy. I'm using the words body of energy not because we have a physical body here, but because it's shall I say, an indication that we are using energy as a vehicle to work with, rather than it's something that we exist within. So we're assigned a body of energy to work within the framework of the structure that our source entity created, to allow us to experience it in its structure, in its body of energy, and feed back to it as a result of the various different experiences that we have. Because from those experiences we learn and evolve. And that evolutionary content is something which we experience and we pass on to our source entity, which in turn automatically passes it on to its source, its creator, the origin. So we are really nothing to do with energy, although we do use it. Now, before I go into the creation process of us as aspects of the source entity, as smaller individualized units of the source entity, I'm going to explain a little bit about the fact that although we're given energy to work with, actually we can abandon this. We can move around the structure of the multiverse, or if we are, and to be honest, the individuals I'm speaking to right now aren't of this genre, but if we are an entity that has chosen to be of service, of full service, by being in control of or in maintenance of the multiverse and maintaining it in a state of its optimal evolutionary condition, so we can maximize our evolutionary condition as well, then we operate outside of that multiversal system. We operate in a completely different energy set, an energy set which is part of the construct of the source entity, not that which it's created, which is the multiverse itself. Now, although we're given a body of energy, this initial body of energy, which is a specialized body of energy, an energy which is specifically capable of supporting sentience, we don't specifically need to keep this body of energy. We don't need to specifically keep this group of energies or energy that we've got with us when we were first created. We can move beyond that. We can move within it and without it and move ourselves beyond those energies that we were initially assigned with, and we can commandeer new energies to work with. And to some extent, that's what we do in an incarnate condition, because although our true energetic self, or our Godhead, our oversoul, or our higher self, whichever way you want to call it, it all means the same thing, projects a part of itself into a lower frequency, into shall I say, a biological or grossly physical body of energy. It can use any other body of energy as well to do the same thing. And so, outside of the physical aspect of the multiverse, the lowest frequencies associated with us, shall I say, the first dimension where the physical universe exists, those 12 frequencies within which this physical universe exists, we could, or should I say our true energetic selves could, move outside of that and commandeer other energies to do other things, specific to that new location or that new energy set that is within the multiverse, and that part of the multiverse that we want to work with. Okay, so looking at it from that perspective, how were we created then? How were we made? How did our source entity think about creating us? Well, I'm not going to use the way the source entity created us, because it was not specifically as it should have been done. And the result of it being in slight error has resulted in the myriad different types of entities that we've currently got that are of a different energy type or different quality of energy, such as the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, even those entities that are classified as planets or galaxies or nebulae, or even rocks or minerals, or even the space in between these things. And so I'm going to talk about how the perfect creation of what we are would be. Now, the perfect creation of what we are is basically linear, but the source entities use a process to maximise that linearity and, shall I say, in a perfect sense, make it happen much faster. So, in the perfect sense, a source entity assigns a part of its own sentience to be used for the creation of smaller versions of itself. That sentience is separated out, and parts of that sentience are extracted and cleaned. Any aspect of that sentience that has anything to do with the source entity is removed. And so it's pure sentience with no programming, no prior knowledge, no prior information, no prior experience, learning or evolutionary context. It's pure, unadulterated sentience. And it's put to one side momentarily. And then the source takes a body of energy, an amount of energy, again assigned. Some part of itself has been assigned, some energetic part of itself has been assigned to create individualized units of itself. But that energy, or energies, because it's not specifically aligned to one particular energy, needs to be of a certain type of energy, where that energy is, to all intents and purposes, a specialized part of energy, an energy that is capable of supporting sentience. Not all energy is capable of supporting sentience, and this is quite clear, because we work with energies, we can manipulate energies, but not all energy is sentient. It has its own role to play. It can be a building block of something, it can be used to create something, or it can simply get in our way and we have to circumnavigate ourselves around it. But in essence, energy has to have a certain specialized function for it to do certain things. And in our particular instance, that energy that we were assigned with when we were created had to have, shall I say, the ability to support sentience, to house it, so to speak. And so the source entity takes an amount of that and assigns this clean sentience to this, shall I say, cleaned energy as well. So that it is pure energy that's housing pure sentience. And neither the energy nor the sentience has any form of contamination by prior work that source entity has done before. And so it creates a completely brand new individualised version of itself. Now, when it creates this individualised version of itself, it then has to educate it, which it does very, very quickly. But in doing so, it doesn't contaminate it, it just gives it a level of education. It just says, basically, you are created by myself, this is what I've achieved so far, and your role is to experience, learn and evolve in any way you can do. Just go out and do it. I mean, this is a common story I've told countless times before. But in essence, that is a story. It is word of mouth, so to speak. And so the entity itself, although it's being educated, doesn't have the experience of that. It doesn't have the experience of existing within the multiverse, or any part of the structure of the source entity that created it. And it doesn't have the sentience of that source entity. It has a clean sentience, something which is there and is being, to all intents and purposes, brand new and fresh, unexposed to anything, and so therefore is able to go out there and do what it wants to do on its own. It has no preconceptions, no prior contamination, no previous ideas, no successes, no failures to work with, and so it can go and do things that were potentially, or would have been difficult, should a level of, shall I say, previous experience been given to it in its experiential sense rather than its verbal sense, so to speak, by going and experiencing it itself in whichever way it wants to. Now, that particular entity can choose to continue to use that body of energy that was assigned to it, or it can move out of that body of energy and create it and commandeer its own body of energy. In essence, it creates its own. If it does in fact create its own body of energy to work things with, or it might just choose to stay in the sentience condition. Now, when an entity moves out of any of these conditions, of these body of energy conditions, whether it's the energy that was assigned to it, or whether it was the energy that it commandeered itself, if it moves out of that, it can move faster around the environment that is the source entity. And it does this by literally spreading its sentience in between the gaps, the voids in between energy. A little bit like a caterpillar. Some of you might have seen these caterpillars that have got basically 12 feet at the front of it and 12 feet at the back, and there's a huge gap in between the middle. And it sort of stretches itself forwards, takes hold of something, lets go of its back feet, and then it brings itself up so that the back feet meet the front feet, and the caterpillar is like a lowercase n, so to speak, and then it stretches out again. That's sort of similar to but a much, shall I say, vastly faster methodology of the way that the sentience moves around the energies associated with the source entity or its multiverse. So it stretches out in between the voids between energies and then moves from one energy to another energy. And this does this quite quickly. Now, energies that are not capable of supporting sentience, it has to move around. Energies that are capable of supporting sentience, it can move within or without. So depending on what it meets, it can use those energies and collect them to create a new body of energy. Or if it's not sentient energy, it can use those for creativity purposes, but it can't use it to house its sentience. It's a little bit like a snail really sort of moving around and decided it wants to shed its shell and occupy a larger shell. It's moving around and using that larger shell. A source entity has to create a sentient energy or a sentient entity literally in a one-by-one basis. But it can accelerate that process in two ways, and does accelerate that process in two ways. The first way is where it creates various functions of itself. It separates itself out into, say, a number of smaller parts, and each of those smaller parts are specialised in the creation of an entity. It is taught, or it assigns its smaller parts, let's say 100 parts of itself, as a small number, to separate out sentience and clean it and clarify it from its sentience, or that aspect of sentience which has been separated out for the use of creation of entities. And it does the same thing with the energy, and then assigns them together and educates it. Now, if that's done once, normally, but there's 100 aspects of the source entity that are doing it concurrently, then you have, every time an entity is created, there's 100 entities created. But the source entity also can use event space to do it as well, and it can assign event space to create myriad, billions upon trillions of entities concurrently as well, by assigning billions upon trillions of aspects of event space to do it. Now, the way it does that is by working with event space and identifying with event space that these things, through its intention to create this number of individuals, it assigns to event space the possibility of duality, or triality, or quadruality, the possibility of possible possibilities, or the possibility of possible possibilities that could potentially create this dualistic, trialistic, or quadratic function. And so event space sees this possibility irrespective of how far in event space future it is, and allows these spaces to be created so that these let's say 100 aspects of a source entity could be multiplied by any number of groups of 100 to create countless, or as many as the source entity wants to, sentient entities in an almost instantaneous condition by the use of event space. Okay, so that sort of explains what we are. We're not truly energetic beings, we're really sentient beings that use energy. And we can move around the energies that are assigned to us, we can move within and without them, we can create with them, we can manifest things with them, and we can move on to other energies as well. And we can move around the multiversal structure by moving in between energies, by projecting ourselves outside of this body of energy and moving ourselves around the voids that are in between the energies that are part of the multiverse. And we can commandeer energies to do various different things if we want to be specifically assigned to a certain type of energy, provided it can support sentience to do certain things. Now, this is quite a lot of information. Has anybody got any questions on this? Because it's quite a piece of information, really, to say that we are sentience. We're not pure thought. Thought is well down the list. This is sentience, pure sentience.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, sure, Molly.
I have a couple questions, and I'll just throw them at you, and then we'll open it up.
Good.
Okay, so I've been taking notes during this. So the one thing I want to say is, how does a type of energy support sentience? You described that the source energy had support sentience versus, say, creativity or other uses of energy, and what must that energy have to achieve this? And then the second thing would be, what is the difference between a purely energetic being versus what we are, which is a sentient being that uses energy?
There's no such. Well, firstly, I'll answer them backward. I've discovered there's no such thing as a purely energetic being. All beings of energy have sentience attached to them. Although, having said that, there are energetic beings that are created by a sentient being, that have a level of intelligence, and they are transient entities. They don't exist ad infinitum as we do. And in terms of that, I would classify astral entities that are basically thought forms that are there to well, as a result of our thoughts, basically, we may create something by accident or by intention, and therefore that energy has a level of intelligence assigned to it. So, but they're transient. They can't exist ad infinitum, so they're not the same as us. We are sentience with energy associated to us in that respect. Now I've answered the last question first. What was the first question again, Marnie? Because it's
Oh, I just, the question about what are the specifics that energy must require in order to support sentience?
Okay.
Because we can give sentience to things, right?
We can't, but the source could. We can create things, but we wouldn't be able to create sentience itself, is what I'm understanding. The energies, the quality of energy that's required to support sentience, I actually don't know how you define that energy. What the difference is between an energy that would support sentience versus not support sentience. That's a good question, actually. That's something I must ask. The origin in this current book I'm working with, what is defining here? What's the defining thing that makes an energy support sentience? That's a very good question, Mike. I don't know. I'll have to find out and feed back at some point.
Well, I'd love to. I'm excited to get your mind thinking. That's wonderful.
Yeah, it's something that sort of didn't cross my mind, but when this information comes through, some of these things do sort of flash by the mind, but not for long. And to be honest, I hadn't actually really settled on this question about what actually makes an energy capable of supporting sentience versus just being an energy. And that's a good question. I'm going to ask that question, Marnie, because I think it's going to be it's going to be a good chapter. I think that will be. Thank you very much for that. The second part of the question, does that answer to your satisfaction?
Oh yeah, definitely. And then the last thing I'll just throw in, I think when you were talking about the myriad of entities being created exponentially or simultaneously, it reminds me of fractals. So I think it makes perfect sense, and there's lots of science to support that.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions on that? No. It's particularly it's a difficult subject, and I know that there's going to be some people out there are going to say, yes, of course we're pure sentience, nothing more great than there are people out there who understand that. But do they understand it? Not because I don't. So I think this question about what energies can support sentience is very, very good. So I shall work with that on certainly before I finish that particular book, which is great. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions on sentience and the what we are before moving to the next part of the Satsanga? No. Okay. Well, the second part was really, to some extent, you guys know what's the meaning of life. So I'm going to throw a question out. What is to all of you? Can any of you explain to me what the meaning of life is? What the meaning of existence is? And
you learn and evolve.
To learn and evolve. Very good. Very good. Very, very good. The whole point of us being here is to support actually the origin. If you think about it, in terms of us existing, we were created by our source entities to support the origin's need to understand itself. Now, when I have worked with the origin and I'm trying to understand in my limited condition what it's doing and how it's doing it, one of the things I'm understanding is that actually it understands extremely little about itself, like infinitesimally little about itself, and so it's needing to have help to do that. Hence the previous experiments with the 12 origins, which failed, because you can't create the origin within the origin. There are certain things that can't be done, and therefore the source entities were created because they were lesser entities, and they were given again, like we are, a reason to be. So really, although we exist in what we could classify as being quite mundane conditions, most of us, you know, we exist. We wake up in the morning, we go to the bathroom, we get washed, we clean our teeth, we make a breakfast sometimes, we go to work if we need to, whatever that work is. Maybe we come back home from work and we do some of the form of recreation, whether it's academic or whether it's physically based at recreation, and then we may, in between that, have our dinner, and then maybe watch a bit of television and then go to bed. And sometimes we procreate in between all of this stuff. And we basically just experience what we classify as life. But that life actually is a complicated subset of actions and reactions that are particularly, in this particular environment, associated with low frequency existence. And so we're performing quite a shall I say, complicated and important aspect of learning that the origin itself, I wouldn't say couldn't do, but would prefer not to, because it's got other things to do itself. It's got its own level of learning and experiencing and evolving. And so have all the different source entities. They're doing their own thing. Although we're doing what we're doing right now, and we can contact our Creator through correct meditation and devotional meditation and thought processes, and maintaining a higher frequency of existence. But even it is doing its own work whilst we're doing this. And of course, when you start to think about that, well, actually, the bit that's animating our bodies is only at best case, a 12th of the entity that we truly are, which is our true energetic self, our Godhead, or our higher self, or oversoul, depending upon how you want to understand the nomenclature that's used. We're only a part of ourselves that's experiencing stuff. Everything else is being experienced in a different part of the physical universe, or even the multiverse. And then you also think, well, actually, some of these aspects, some of these souls, if you want to use the word soul, that are projected into a physical form, can also split their cells out into 12 shards. So there could be 12 sub-incarnations or other aspects of incarnations that are happening that aren't particularly associated with the primary aspect that's being projected out. And so what we're doing is really, and Chris has hit upon it in a very sort of high-level sense, we're experiencing learning and evolving. The meaning of our existence in all forms, not just life, is to experience, learn and evolve as a smaller aspect of the origin. Now, what I've done there is I've moved away from using the word source there, because actually the source is part of the origin, and therefore as smaller versions of the source, as individualized units of sentience that has been assigned or has commandeered bodies of energy within our source, we are still actually parts of the origin. We're still smaller parts of the origin that has levels of sentience attached to it. And so we are really smaller bits of sentient intelligence that is the origin, that's investigating itself. I'm going to give you examples how that works. If when you are thinking or you're meditating, or if you notice some part of your body have a pain, or you have an ache somewhere, you zoom into that part of your body, don't you? You work with that. Well, think about moving further into that. And rather than thinking, oh, my head's aching, or my arm's aching, or my knees are aching, or my hips are aching, and you focusing on the larger area, that you zoom into the cellular structure of that area. And then you go further than that. You zoom into the structure of a cell. And you go down to the atomic structure of the cell. And then you go further than that atomic structure of the cell, and you go down several levels later, where you're in the fundamental building block of the physical universe, which is called the Anu, which has been understood by many Hindu yogis and, of course, a couple of, shall I say, Western yogis, Besant and Ledbetter, from a long, long time ago, around about the start of the 20th century, where they start to understand that really we're experiencing physicality in its most basic form. Physicality's most basic form is an aspect of the origin. It's a part of it. It's a part of his body. As when we zoom into our body and go down to the Anu level, for instance, past the cellular level, past the atomic structure level, down to the Anu, and if we could experience that and work with it and manipulate it and see what happens, then we would do this. Then we would recognise that we are doing the same thing from the sentient condition and from the sentient working with the energetic condition, which is what we basically are. And so the meaning of our existence is to support the expansion of the sentience of the origin. The sentience of the origin is constrained within and works with an area of its areas of self-awareness, i.e. it knows where it is, it understands it. Its area of self-awareness is a little bit like we know our own backyard, and we know a little less about our street, we know even less about our suburb, we know even less about the city that our suburb's part of, we know even less about the country that our city's with, we know even less about the country that our or should I say, we know even less about the continent that our country is part of, and then we know even less about the planet, and then we know even less about the solar system, and then know even less about the galaxy, and then even less about the universe. But in doing this work, we're starting to map it out, to understand it, to work with it. So we are helping the origin understand itself. And in doing that, we naturally understand ourselves, because we are smaller parts of the origin that have been created by a smaller part of the origin that's been created as a source entity. Has anybody got any questions on that? Because it's quite another piece of information as well, that we are really aspects of the origin that is through our creation by another aspect of the origin that was given individual sentience and a body of energy to allow it all to understand itself. Any questions, concerns, worries, thought processes? No. It's interesting to note that we're capable of thinking in this way now, whilst incarnate, of understanding it whilst incarnate. And this is a function of our evolutionary condition. function of our evolutionary condition is that we move up the frequencies. Unless we were moving up the frequencies, we wouldn't be able to access this level of information, or wouldn't even be interested in this level of information. So anybody like myself or other individuals who's able to gain extra information and present it in a way that can be understood to the general populace, incarnate populace that is really only able to do that because we are moving up the frequencies. And not only the person who's doing it, the teacher that's doing it, but also the students as well. And so it's showing that we are evolving, we are learning to create that evolution, and we are experiencing to create the learning, which is the important part of what we're doing right now. And so, from a evidential condition, actually, everything we're doing is paying off. Everything we're doing in our existence is working. And in general, we are contributing in a very significant way towards the origins understanding of self. And that's the meaning of existence, of life. Okay. Does that make sense to everybody? Is it something we can work with and understand? And for those individuals who are outside of this particular environment right now, we can explain to, given the right chance. Yeah, I guess we could. Okay. Does anybody have any other questions they want to ask before any random questions before we go into meditation? No. Right. Okay. What I want to do in that case is to in the previous meditations that we've done in Healing the Earth, we've done it together, but not together. We haven't done this particular meditation for well over a year, I've noted, and it's something that we can do better now because we've worked in metaconcert before. On other things, metaconcert is a synergetic method of meditation, where we all use various a certain form of visualization that I talk you through to allow you to work with me, and I work with you, and we all become one. And therefore we can, shall I say, multiply our efforts by the factor of the number of individuals who are here. So if I recount how many are here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's 11 times 11, which is around 132, I think. Individuals, although we're 11. But that's the function of what's happening here. So let's get ourselves in a nice, comfortable but maintainable position. So I want to use the synergetic approach to an old meditation to heal the earth, where we use the chakras of the earth to work with that, and shall I say, energize the ley lines and the energetic network that is the earth. Okay. So if you close your eyes, and if you're in a chair, if you can sit up straight as you can, with your back straight, and the small of your back in the right angled aspect of the chair. And you can put your hands palm uppermost on your thighs. That's the part of the body that is in between the knee and where the legs of the femur meets the lower body. I want you to just relax and just imagine that you're in a corridor. Okay? You're in a corridor, and this corridor stretches out in front of you, and at the end of this corridor there's a white door. Walk towards the end of the white door. You walk towards the end of the corridor where the white door is. There's no doors on the right hand side. There's no doors on the left-hand side. There's just this white door at the end. I want you to open the door. And when you open the door, you see me sitting on a chair. And either side of me is two chairs. I should say one chair either side of me. And I want you to sit down on one of those chairs. And I want you to imagine that you're holding my right hand with your left hand, or my left hand with your right hand. And in doing so, you connect with me. Okay, I'm starting to feel people moving into the room. And don't forget to close the door after you. I didn't mention closing the door, but you can imagine the door is closed after you. And you're sitting down, holding my left hand with your right hand, or my right hand with your left hand. It doesn't matter how many people are there. Just imagine that you're sitting in one seat, and there may be somebody else in the other seat. Okay, and I'm feeling everybody's there. So what I'm going to imagine now is that actually, although there's probably 3 or 4 people sitting in one seat and 4 or 5 or 6 sitting in the other seat on top of each other, that I'm moving these seats out now into a circle. And I'll move my seat into the middle of this circle. So what we have now is everybody's got a right hand in contact with somebody's left hand, and somebody's left hand in contact with their right hand. And there you've created a circle. So you're part of a circle where your hands are in contact with somebody else's hands. And those hands are creating a synergetic effect, because you're all linked together. But the synergetic effect is in series, so to speak. It's 1 plus 1. It's not a multiple. Now I'm in the centre of this circle. And I want you to all imagine now that you can project a small beam of light, like a laser beam of light, from your heart chakra. Now your heart chakra exists sort of the midpoint in the sternum. This is the little area of the front of the rib cage, which is about potentially about 9 inches or so long, from the top of the throat down to where the left hand and right hand aspects of the rib cage join and form the left hand and right hand sides. And I want you to project this laser beam of energy from this area where your heart chakra exists, and project it into the same place on me. Imagine you're facing me and you're projecting this beam of energy into where I am, into my sternum, into my heart chakra. And I'm also projecting energy back to you as well, to all of you. And so we now have a cartwheel effect, where everybody is joined to everybody else through the hub. So for instance, Yvonne is joined to Kathleen and Verona and Lucy and Alan and Marnie and Chris and Lily and Apso and Mo and Adriana and myself, through myself. Because you're connected to the hub, and the hub is connected to everybody else. So everybody's connected to me, and everybody's connected to everybody else as well. And hence the synergetic effect is established. The meta-concert effect is established. meta-concept meditation effect is established. So now we're working not as 11 people, but as 11 times 11 people. And so we all move now together outside of this room, like a ball. This wheel, this cartwheel effect, is actually the outer perimeter and the centre point of a ball. Okay, and we move up from this room, out of the room, out of the building, keeping going uppermost, out past the suburbs that the building's in, out past the city that the building's in, out past the country that the city's in, out past the landmass that the country's in. And we go out into what you would call orbit above the planet Earth. And now we move around the outside of planet Earth, and we focus ourselves initially above the North Pole. And this is where, in this particular vision process, one of the first of the 6 chakras that the Earth uses is positioned. It's one on the North Pole, one on the South Pole, and there's 4 more around the middle periphery, what you might call the equator, for instance. But right now we're right above the North Pole, and we imagine, as we look down, that on the North Pole there is a cone stretching out from the ground up towards us. This cone has 2 diameters. The smallest diameter is facing the Earth, and the largest diameter is facing us. And this diameter, or these 2 diameters of the cone, are the structure of the cone. And this cone is a chakra. It's a point of energy, shall I say, processing. And the energy that is processed by this particular chakra is pulled into the Earth and energizes it. It makes the ley lines work. It makes everything else work. And we're going to recharge the Earth because it needs some recharging right now. It needs a bit of help. And so we focus on pulling energy in from the source, and we imagine that from nowhere a laser beam comes down from some point beyond us into the centre of this cone and energizes the cone. And just for a moment focus on this beam of light, this laser beam of energy coming from nowhere, and just focusing on being projected to the centre point of this chakra. As we work with this chakra, the Earth changes colour slightly. It was somewhat dark when we first moved into orbit, but now it is a little bit lighter. And so we can move around now to the South Pole area, where there's a similar construct there, similar cone-shaped chakra. It is assigned to the South Pole. You can call this the Hara line that goes from the South Pole to the North Pole of the Earth. This is the Hara line of the Earth, if you want to call it that. So again, just imagine this laser beam of energy coming from nowhere, from the source, and going straight into the dead centre of this chakra and recharging the energies of the Earth in this South Pole area. All this energy is coming, free energy is coming from the source. It's charging up the Earth and giving it energy, and giving it sustenance. And now the Earth has increased its vibration, and so it's no longer the same colour as it was previously. It's getting slightly lighter. It's becoming more and more lighter. Previously it was dark, it's now becoming a grey colour. It's becoming lighter. And so we move back up towards the North Pole, and we look down upon the Earth, and we literally think in terms of the cardinal points of a compass, or in fact the cardinal points in a clock, where 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock are those points of the other chakras, the other 6 chakras, which are spaced around the equator of the Earth. So now we can move, if you think of it in terms of the 12 o'clock position being uppermost, we're facing the North Pole chakra, the South Pole chakra is further away from us, the 12 o'clock chakra is above us, and facing uppermost. The 3 o'clock chakra is to the right, the 6 o'clock chakra is facing down, the 9 o'clock chakra is to the left. So we move to the 12 o'clock chakra, and again, imagine that we're able to project from nowhere this energy from the source into the direct centre of this chakra that's represented at the 12 o'clock position along the equator. This laser beam of energy charging up the network of energies, the ley lines that the Earth uses to exist on this particular low frequency condition. And again the Earth increases its vibration and changes colour again. And it's starting to lose its grey colour now and start to become more of a white colour. More of a clear colour. And so we move around to the opposite side of the equator, to where the 6 o'clock chakra would be. And so therefore we also now imagine, we use our intention to imagine another laser beam of energy coming from nowhere, coming from the source, and being aimed in the dead centre of this chakra, this 6 o'clock chakra on the equator, to charge up the energies of the energy system that is part of the ley lines, if you want to call them that, of the Earth. And just imagine that energy going into that chakra and charging it up. And again the Earth changes colour again. It starts to become a sparkly silvery colour. It's becoming more energised. And so now we move across to the 3 o'clock chakra. And we imagine, again, this laser beam of energy going into the 3 o'clock chakra and energising the Earth. Making the Earth more energised, and the network of energies, the ley lines, much more energised. And now we can see that the Earth is becoming more golden, much more golden. It moved away from being silver and it's now starting to become a more golden colour. So now we move around to the 9 o'clock chakra now. Move around the equator and do the same thing. So you imagine there's a laser beam of energy going into the centre point of the 9 o'clock chakra, energizing the earth. And now with that work we've just done, the earth changes totally. All of its energy systems are now working fully, its chakras are now working fully, and it's no longer a golden colour, it's an iridescent, silvery golden colour, pulsating, vibrance with energy, vibrance with actuality. Every aspect of the earth is working correctly. Every ley line, every energy system, every energy nexus or chakra is working in its optimal condition. And so now we can move away from where we are and move back down to our room, because we see the earth is now operating correctly in the way it should be, as an iridescent energy system, an entity in its own right. And so we move back down out of orbit towards the landmass that holds the city that we've come from, and then towards, which is the country that we've come from, and then we move down lower so we can see the city that we are in, it's within the country, it's part of the landmass. And now we zoom in closer to the city. We now see the suburb that we're part of within the city, and then we start to see the road that the rooms in, or the houses in, or the buildings in, where the room is in. And then we go through the roof of the building and back into the room, where there's 11 chairs in a circle. Everybody's got a right hand connected with somebody's left hand, and all the heart chakras are connected to my heart chakra. And so just contract that energy beam from your heart chakra to my heart chakra, so they can become separated out again. So there's just me in the centre now, and all of you with your left hands in contact with somebody else's right hand, or somebody's right hand in contact with somebody's left hand. And now, just imagine that I'm back. I've moved out of the centre now of this circle. I'm outside of the circle, and the circle contracts, and you are now either on the left-hand side of me or the right-hand side of me. So your right hand is holding my left hand, or your left hand is holding my right hand. And now we're all separate, apart from just holding my right hand and my left hand. And now to move back into your current location, you let go of my right hand or my left hand, and you open the door from the room that we're in, and close the door behind you, and walk down the corridor. And now, walking down the corridor, you walk back into where you are right now. You walk back into your body, you slowly open your eyes, and come back into the room, which is where you are right now. Okay. And the earth is very grateful for your work. I can tell you that now. Very powerful piece of work, because it was all done in metta concert. Previous meditations in this way have only been specifically working with us out of metta concert. So it's only been a case of the number of individuals there. But in metaconcepts, we're working in synergy, and so we've had the equivalent of the number of individuals together working as a multiple. Okay. So thank you very much for taking part in today's Satsanga, and I wish you well today, or yesterday, or tomorrow, depending upon which part of the world you're in. And I look forward to working with you again in February, and I'll send that out very quickly. Thank you all very much.
Did you see the aliens in Crete?